back to the correction skills. I know there's a lot of people here for the correction skills, but I want to hold those who are here for some of the less controversial bills until the end of all this testimony. So we are going to try going by topic today. So if you are here for something other than the correction stuff, you are safe going and getting a cup of coffee until, let's say, about 2:15. And we're going to spend at least that much time for the first round of the corrections material. So, our first witness, Attorney General Harshbarger.
Thank you. Can I have Peter Macy join me briefly? He's in charge of the nonprofit dealing with this. And thank you very much for taking us out of order. And I appreciate the patience of everybody else who's here. For me, I'm pleased to be here. As you mentioned, Senator Brownsberger, I was the Attorney General. It was long before many of the people here. Jim Cantwell was still out there beating the hustings along with the former Assistant Attorney General Will Brownsberger and others. But one of the things we began when I was Attorney General was a major focus on elder protection and financial exploitation, dealing with the vulnerable and the poor and the powerless. One piece of that was really relatively untouched was guardianship reform, which was an issue that kept coming up with our Disability Rights Project, with our Elder Protection Project, and working with then young John Ford and Wynn Gerhardt from Legal Services and several other ARP and many other groups. We held several conferences and began a guardianship reform process that led to several major changes in the guardianship laws. The one piece, Senator and Representative Chairman Cronin, that was left out was creating the Office of Public Guardianship itself. So you had a state oversight in terms of both monitoring, regulations, education, support, to try to deal with the various issues that would arise in this process. That office seems to be still to be critical because we have many guardianship agencies involved, state agencies, many nonprofits, many volunteers. The courts repeat their dealings every day. But under the studies that we've begun with the Mass Guardianship Policy Institute, and Peter Macy is here just to touch on that, we've discovered that there are at least 5,000 annually unbefriended, that is, people who have no access to family, volunteers, or any other kind of guardianships. And that's the poor and the powerless group that we would like, the last resort, if you will, that this bill is designed to address. Now, the unique feature, aside from all of those other pieces, you'll hear from many people the broad support that exists here in terms of the various advocacy groups. The missing piece in this has been, how will we fund this? Well, we happen to propose an innovative way. That nonprofit funding, that is all we're asking for, is the state agency to have oversight, and a nonprofit agency will be the Office of Public Guardian, supported by private funding. So I want to bring that to your attention. I really hope you'll give this bill, which appears not to be controversial, is not adding another bureaucracy. It is dealing, though, with something that last evening, and I mentioned this only because I happened to hear this morning, President Obama, former President Obama, mentioned it's very easy to be courageous on behalf of the powerful, the influential, and the privileged. The question is, where's the courage or the advocacy and voice of the poor, the powerless, the vulnerable? And that's the group, the intellectually and developmentally disabled, the elderly, and others who don't have family, who don't have volunteers, don't have agencies to support them. And that's why I support this bill to create the Office of Public Guardian. Peter Macy is the Guardianship Community Trust, is one of the principals of Mass Guardianship Policy Institute. Thank you so much for your time. Peter?
Thank you, Attorney General Harshbarger. And I want to make sure everybody noticed something. Is that Attorney General Harshbarger confined his remarks to 3 minutes, which we appreciate. And that is going to be the rule today. And it's generally the rule in our hearings. And you will hear the buzzer and you will see the clock. Sir.
You should not know that was such an exception.
You did very well.
As Attorney General Harshbarger indicated, I'm the Executive Director of Guardian Community Trust, which is a founding member of the Mass Guardianship Policy Institute, who've been working with the public guardianship bill for the past few years. I want to say, first off, what an honor it is to appear here with Attorney General Harshbarger, who has been an inspiration to everybody and all stakeholders in this honest issue for 20 years at least. He's still with it. He's held us together and done enormous things to move this process along. So I want to I also apologize, I'm going to follow my notes because I could go on for 6 hours if I didn't. Why now? Why bring up public guardianship? Again, it's been brought up repeatedly before the legislature, and it hasn't passed for a long time. There's two reasons. One of the ones is what Attorney General Harshbarger referenced, the probate code. The probate code was enacted in 2009, which provided essential protections for people against whom guardianship has been filed. All laudable, all important, but it has driven up the cost of bringing guardianship. So at the time that the UPC was enacted, we had, for those who were unbefriended, we had a substandard system of voluntold appointments, sort of marginally willing volunteers being asked to take on these unfunded guardianships. What happened is after the UPC was enacted, what had been an inconvenient system became a manageable system. And we now have a situation in which finding a willing guardian has become an ordeal. You're hearing this from every level of the guardianship system. And we are finding that judges themselves refer to being uncomfortable with the fact that they're making an appointment of somebody who may be only marginally interested in the appointment at all. The other reason for bringing this issue up today is that we do have a radical new way to fund guardianship. And the thing that we bring to the table is money. Money has always been the issue in every state as well as in Massachusetts. We have a business plan in place to bring approximately $800,000 a year of non-private funding to entirely fund the operational side of a public guardian. 60% of those funds have already been pledged. We will definitely get the funds that we need. This budget will reach, we estimate, at least 400 individuals. No tax dollars will be spent on actually providing guardians. What we need from you is the public entity to give this the imprimatur of state government. Creating the office of public guardian is a critical role. We must have this. We cannot get the private dollars without your help to create a tiny government office. We figure between 3 and 5 individuals is all it will take. It will do the things that General Harshbarger referred to. It is a public-private partnership at its most efficient. The cost estimate will be about $400,000 a year, half the private parties will bring to it. Thank you. Please report this bill out to you.
Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time. Just a quick, hang on a second. Any questions from members of the panel? It's an important issue. We look forward to much more discussion about it.
Well, thank you for today's out of turn. We appreciate all the people's patience as well. Thank you very much.
So now we're going to turn to the corrections bills, and we're going to call a panel led by Representative Cabral, who is the sponsor of these two bills. Representative Cabral. That's fine.
I'm going to step up so I can meet the 3-minute timeline, which is not easy.
We do appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, Madam Chair, I'm here to testify in favor of House 3034 and House 3033. House 3034 is the so-called inmate work programs in Massachusetts. What this bill does, and both of these bills as I speak and I make a presentation to you, is very basic. The message is very basic on both pieces of legislation. This is about making sure that state dollars are not used for programs that are not specifically the objective of the state or any locality. So H 3034 would keep inmate work programs in state, and specifically for that reason, the average person that serves in the House of Corrections, usually Massachusetts, serves an average between 4 to 6 months out of their sentence. And we know all those individuals have to come back to their community, so we hope that when they do come back and join society back in their own respective communities, that they've gone through extensive rehab programs that are effective, cost-effective as well, but effective, so they really join society and their communities, and they are good, productive citizens going forward. In terms of the issues of taking inmate programs out of state, we don't think that's appropriate to use state dollars for that. Now, we have recommended to the committee that we have recommended to the committee to include the exceptions of national emergencies or national disasters with the approval of the governor in those circumstances. Never have we had inmate work programs out of state, including for 9/11 and Katrina. We had volunteer staff people from various departments, including from various sheriff's departments, that have actually gone and done that, but never inmates. On Bill 3033, again, the message is very similar to the first one. This is around 287G, so-called 287G programs, which is programs that would train and have, in this case, the only 3 facilities or 3 institutions that have signed these agreements right now is both Bristol County Sheriff's Office, the Columbia County Sheriff's Office, and actually our own DOC department. They did in 2016. And basically the message is the same, is these are federal programs, these are federal priorities. We ought not to be spending state dollars to carry out and administer those programs. If it doesn't stop any entity from not signing into those agreements, it just says that if you're going to sign into those agreements, it's not about a debate if it's the right thing to do. It's not about a debate about immigration here. It's about state resources, state dollars, and state dollars ought to be used for state programs. Period. I mean, that's basically what the message is here. It's nothing else. Now, if someone wants to enter into an agreement to carry out objectives of 287G programs, then we ought to seek for federal dollars to provide those kinds of programs. Other than that, I think it's very simple. And I'm not going to entertain and be debating immigration policy. It's the responsibility of the federal government, the responsibility of Congress. We ought to do it, and do it soon. For us, it's about applying our state dollars to those programs that are important, even law enforcement programs. I'd rather have state dollars go to my local police department to carry out public safety in my community. That's the idea. And we all know that state dollars are very, very tight, and that's what we ought to be doing. So, just a quick aside, and I know my 3 minutes are up. On these, also, there's a provision on the bill that would seek out the information if any of these programs have been used, and state dollars have been using these programs. They would have to report, those entities would have to report to us how much money or how much state dollars have been used or could be used to implement these sort of 287G programs. There are all kinds of other issues related to this that I want to get into, litigation, legal fees that might be subject to the liability of all these things. And there are plenty of information out there that you can seek around what has cost us already in Massachusetts, legal fees for other types of programs or similar projects that are being conducted by various entities in Massachusetts, not to mention those in other states. So I can provide the committee that information. So I hope, Mr. Chairman and Madam Chair, that the committee reports out both 30, 33, 30, 34 favors. Thank you.
Thank you. Everybody a favor here, which is to comply with our procedure here, which is this is not a rally, this is a hearing, and we don't want, this is our policy on all the issues, and we enforce it in both directions, because we don't want people clapping, we don't want people booing. Let's have a civil dialogue here about the issues. While this Representative Crawl's panel is coming up, I just want to read a letter into the record which I received from the Senate President, which states, Dear Chairs Brownsberger and Cronin, I am writing to support the purpose of House 3033, an act relative to enforcing federal law. This bill would prevent the use of state funds by sheriffs and the State Department of Corrections to enforce federal immigration laws. At a time of significant challenges in balancing the state budget, I believe it is not appropriate to use scarce state funds to enforce federal immigration laws, for which federal authorities should be responsible. Therefore, I ask your committee to report favorably on this important subject. Thank you for your prompt consideration of this legislation. So I now see Representative Crawl's panel before us. Thank you. Who's speaking? Go ahead.
In the interest of all of your time, I am going to do the testifying. The rest of our group here has letters that they will submit to you. My name is Lori Bullard. I live in Bristol County, and I am a Massachusetts taxpayer, and I'm here to testify in support of two bills filed by Representative Antonio Cabral, House Bill number 3033 and House Bill number 3034. I have been personally motivated to do what I can to aid and protect immigrants in our city of New Bedford and surrounding areas as a volunteer with the Immigrants Assistance Center in New Bedford. With a new administration and a local sheriff determined to rid our city of criminal immigrants, the fear and confusion for immigrants is undermining the very fabric of our city. New Bedford was built by immigrants. Today, students are afraid to attend school. They're afraid that their parents will be arrested and await deportation. They are afraid of what's going to happen to them. Will they have to go with their parents? Will they stay here unattended? Older immigrants are afraid to leave their house, afraid to go to their social areas, for fear that they will find themselves arrested and booked, possibly even for an arrest that took place years ago, and as viewed as a criminal now and able to be deported. It is a very dangerous time for all immigrants, and I feel strongly that they must not be persecuted or treated like this. I see in Representative Cabral's two bills as a way to help these hardworking, loyal people. In most cases, their only crime has been entering this country and our city through a variety of ways, not always legal. And they are being rounded up regardless of their status without the means to defend themselves. In addition, I support House Bill 3033 because I believe strongly that money coming from the state must be used for in-state purposes only. And I am concerned how that money is being spent at the Bristol House of Correction now. Bristol County Jail, according to Sunday's Boston Globe story titled, "They Left Him Everything to Hang Himself," written by Jennifer McKim and Shaz Sajadi, has the highest incident of suicide of all county jails in Massachusetts. In general, county jails have a higher incident of suicide than state prisons, and I quote, "Since 2012, Bristol County House of Correction has had a disproportionate number of those suicides. In Bristol County," this is a quote again, "which accounted for nearly a quarter of all jail suicides." The Globe article also points out that Bristol County Jail has only 3 full-time mental health clinicians for 1,350 inmates, while Hampton County has 10 full-time mental health clinicians for approximately the same number of inmates. I want to know where our state dollars, are being spent. This article is deeply troubling and says to me that our sheriff has not been focusing on the well-being of the inmates. Seems to me the job of the sheriff is to manage his correctional institution, to make sure that rehabilitation programs are plenty and thorough, that inmates have what they need to re-enter their community when their time is up as contributing citizens. The deportations of immigrants should not be his major focus, although I think it is. So I support Representative Cabral's House Bill 3034, limiting the use of prison labor as well, because I am horrified that our sheriff would offer up his prisoners as if they are chattel to build the president's wall to keep immigrants out. As well, I am concerned for the well-being of the inmates, both those who have been incarcerated for a real criminal act and those awaiting deportation solely because they are immigrants. Removal from their support networks has proven detrimental. Visits from clergy, lawyers, family, gone, along with in-house support of mental health and social services, clinicians, rehabilitation programs, all gone. They are thrust, hardly volunteering, into a foreign situation far away from their loved ones, placed into unfamiliar surroundings, and often doing work they don't understand, increasing their levels of anxiety and depression. This is not right. I respectfully urge this committee to vote favorably for both House 3033 and House 3034 and allow them to the floor for general debate. Thank you for hearing.
Thank you for your testimony, and I did let you go on longer because you were so gracious as to speak for the whole panel. I appreciate that. Are there any questions for the witness?
Mr. Chairman, I did have a couple of questions.
Representative Lyons.
I don't know whether this is appropriate to the folks here, or maybe Mr. Cabral can help us out, Representative Cabral. Folks have brought up the number, how many dollars are being spent. I heard it, numerous times during the discussion. That how much? Can anyone put that in context? How many dollars would be?
State dollars?
Well, isn't that what the law says? How many? So I'm asking a question about state dollars. How many state dollars are you talking about?
Well, I think on one of those bills, exactly, they would ask, or not ask, mandate that any institution, the county sheriff or otherwise, involved in this program, they would have to submit a report to us, both to the legislature and the executive branch, on how much money we spend on those programs now, or if they were to be implemented going forward, what would be the cost, the estimate of the cost of those.
So you don't know the number?
But you know the number?
No, you're the one that submitted the bill. I'm asking you if you know the number.
No, I do not know the number, because it depends on how many people are going to be involved in those programs. For example, all I know is what I read in the newspaper, because no one spoke with me or with you probably before submitting or presenting any kind of programs of this nature. All I know is in the case of Bristol County, if I may reference Bristol County, the numbers have been ranging from 8 to 10 to 12 correctional officers who will be involved, for example, in the 287G programs. Well, if it is, let's say it's 10. What's the salary of those folks? What's the benefits of those 10 correctional officers? How many hours are they involved in those programs? So, while so many variables, then only that institution would be able to put a price or cost associated with that. And that's their responsibility, since it is us, the legislature, that funds and appropriates every single one of those dollars to those facilities and to those institutions. So I think we deserve the answers, and those ought to be provided, those who are on the front lines administering the program.
So between 8 and 10 employees is what you said.
That's what I've read.
So, well, that's fine. So the question that I have is, we just received a letter from the Senate President, maybe you can help me out with this, and it says in the letter, at this time of significant challenges, I believe, in balancing the state budget, I believe it's not appropriate to use scarce state funds to enforce federal immigration laws. Now, the President of the Senate's #1 priority this year in January was to spend $18 million on pay raises. Now, I don't see this coming anywhere near that. The other question I have, how many people have been rounded up in the city of Belleville?
I'm not going to be here, I'm testifying before this committee, I'm not going to answer the debate with you.
I'm asking you a question. I'm not trying to debate
If you want
you.
an answer from the Senate President, or ask the Senate President, I don't speak for him.
Be happy
I'm a
to.
spokesman for him. I happen to be the representative from Bristol. If you want to have a private conversation with me, my office is open. You can always sit down with me and have a discussion. I know you have, during the budget debate, you had some of these concerns, and you had a concern with the Senate President's priorities, even though we're debating the budget in the House, not in the Senate. So I think if you do continue to have those, I think the most appropriate person is the Senate President's office.
So the second question I asked that you didn't answer was, how many people have been rounded up? If anybody knows.
I don't run the program. You don't ask the question, you're going to run the program.
Well, I've just heard testimony that says about how much money we're spending, how many people have been rounded up, and I'm just trying to get it. I don't have any idea. That's why I'm asking the question. I don't know. So you've got a bill to solve a problem, and you can't give me any information. That's just a bit unusual. Oh, you don't know the answer? How many people?
Gentlemen, now we're getting just into kind of sparring here.
Thank you, Mrs. I'm all set.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from members of the panel? Thank you. We've been joined by Representative Mike Day. Welcome, Representative Day. If there are no further questions for the members of the panel, we thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you for hearing me.
Sheriff Hodgson.
Chair Bronford, Chairman Crowe, members of the committee, I'd like to first testify on 3034, 3033, and then I may testify on 3034.
That's fine, thank you.
Members of the committee, this bill is a direct attempt to restrict the Bristol and Plymouth County Sheriff's offices, the State Department of Corrections, and all of our law enforcement partners on the local, state, and federal levels are working together to make our communities safe. So let me be crystal clear this afternoon. This bill will have a negative impact on public safety by exposing our citizens and legal residents to more victimization. Not only that, but it will cost taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let me explain. The 287G program was established to keep people safe by allowing Immigration and Customs Enforcement to detain dangerous criminally illegal immigrants who are arrested by local and state police. Keeping people safe is my charge, my #1 priority as Sheriff of Bristol County. If this bill passes and we can't use state resources to partner with ICE, this legislature is blocking our participation in 287G and directly putting the people you and our law enforcement community are sworn to protect at risk. If a federal law enforcement agency felt an individual is at such a high risk to commit more crimes that they should be held in jail, why in the world would anyone not want a program that would keep the person out of our community? This bill was filed saying this public safety program squanders state resources. That's not true. This partnership will cost no additional taxpayer money. I can't think of anything that would squander state resources more than taxpayers having to pay the costs associated with apprehending and prosecuting, incarcerating, and deporting someone who was already in our custody but released because of this bill. If this legislature doesn't want state funds being used for it, I generate millions in federal funds every year that more than fund this program. The immigration detention facility I built with no state money has generated about $45 million in revenue for the state since 2011 in the form of federal payments for the care and custody of ICE detainees. After expenses, the state has profited almost $37 million in that time frame. Lastly, since this bill forbids us from using our staff because they are attached to the state budget, does this mean that we must now remove state and local officers from their assignments on the FBI Terrorism Task Force, the FBI Gang Task Force, and the DEA Task Force? The safety and security of our communities isn't measured in dollars and cents. If this bill passes, however, we may be measuring it in the number of grieving families. I ask this committee to vote unfavorably on 3033. If I may now, on House Bill 3034.
Please, sir, that's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Sheriff of Bristol County, my top priority is public safety. As warden of the 2 jail facilities, my top priority is corrections. At the heart of corrections is correcting the unlawful behavior and preparing inmates for successful re-entry upon release. It's why years ago I took weights and televisions out of the jail cells and increased religious, educational, and substance abuse programs. And it's why earlier this year I introduced my vision for the national initiative called Project NICE, National Inmate Community Endeavors. That would dispatch inmate volunteers from across the country to assist in disaster cleanups and major infrastructure projects. Which brings us to why I'm here today, for offering the construction of a barrier along the border as the debut of Project NICE. And honestly, I can't think of a better project. The benefits are many for all involved. The inmate volunteers earn time off their sentences and learn and apply vocational skills on the job site. Leaving jail with something to add to your resume is a good thing. Is a good thing. It can only help the inmate get a job upon re-entry. Such is the case in California, where for years inmates have been fighting wildfires side by side with firefighters. Guess how many of those firefighters used to be inmates who learned the skills during incarceration? Many. And believe me, there will be plenty of inmate volunteers following the project's announcement. Several inmates at both my jail facilities have asked how they can volunteer. Taxpayers win because the volunteer inmates lower the cost of the project. We expect to work with the federal government, more specifically the Federal Emergency Management Association, to use the funds for transportation, food, and housing, etc. And the citizens of our country, in Massachusetts and beyond, win because the physical barrier will prevent illegal immigration from following into our country and overtaxing every level of our infrastructure. Project NICE has never been endorsed by a group of lawmakers, Project NICE has even been endorsed by the group of lawmakers considered the anti-Trump working group here at the State House. Member and House Majority Leader Ronald Mariano of Norfolk told the State House News Service on April 14th, the group would suggest action to allow inmates to be used out of state in cases of national emergencies or disasters. And let's not lose sight of the fact that people of Massachusetts stand to benefit should we be faced with a natural disaster or major infrastructure project. I'm sure you'll agree that saving taxpayers money by using creative and useful programs like Project NICE should not be based on individual subjective agendas of legislators, but on what is most beneficial to the citizens and legal residents they are elected to serve. One of the great characteristics of our nation over the course of our history is that when communities face disasters or infrastructure projects larger than the community or region can handle, we used our creative thinking, resources, and national pride to assist in our common goal by making a stronger and safer America. Project NICE was created to do just that. I ask that you vote unfavorably on House Bill 3034, and I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee for my time to testify.
Thank you, Sheriff Hudson. Are there questions for Sheriff Hudson? Yes, please.
Sheriff, thank you for coming in. Are you aware of any other sheriffs or the Mass Sheriff's Association that support your position, or are you standing alone on this?
Well, there are, for example, Barnstable, I understand, is coming on board for 287G. Plymouth has already signed on. The Massachusetts Department of Corrections has signed on. And I would expect there probably will be other sheriffs that will eventually sign on to 287G. That's something that the federal government has to roll out. But it clearly is a public safety issue that I think all of us here in this room today agree is paramount, even our community city.
If I could just ask the panel that came on before you, the number one job of the sheriff, as I understand, is care and custody of the inmates under your supervision. If you were to divert resources away from that, does that expose you in any way from the core of your mission of the care and custody of those inmates?
Not at all. We wouldn't be diverting. In fact, an interview, and this isn't the actual officers that are already on duty, they're working. If, for example, a construction project was being done at our facility, we may have to pull somebody off their post and have them escort somebody through the facility for an hour. These interviews are done in the facility, in the booking area. Many of these officers that are being trained are already in the booking area. So it's not going to change their responsibilities that won't hurt us in our ability to continue meeting our standards and our goals.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the sheriff? Representative Lyons.
Thank you, Sheriff Hutchins. You answered the question about state money, how much state money, and you said no state money would be involved in this. The other question is part of your goal as the sheriff of Bristol County, is one of those goals to round up people in New Bedford?
Not at all. This program doesn't, our staff do not go out and round anybody up. These are people who have been arrested by one of our local police departments, brought to us after having been arrested for a crime, and who are now in our custody, who otherwise, without being able to interview them in a timely way, could potentially be bailed out back into the community. And if you research what happened just with this murder here in Boston, just occurred, these two doctors that were killed. The individual, the suspect, is a permanent legal resident, not a citizen, was arrested for bank robbery, served 10 months, and got out and committed this murder. What's interesting about it is that under the federal law, policy, they cannot, for example, in this case, that individual, even though he committed 2 bank robberies, and he's a permanent legal resident, if you're a permanent legal resident and you get a sentence, if it's not a year and a day, then ICE can't intercede for a deportation hearing. In this instance, This individual committed 2 bank robberies. He was given 364 days for his sentence. Had he been given 365 in a day, he wouldn't have been out. He probably wouldn't even be in the country. And those 2 people would be alive. And these are the kinds of things that we're talking about. This is cutting to the core of our obligations, both as legislators, as sheriffs, and in the Commonwealth and across this country, that we need to use every resource available to us to make sure somebody that we know is a threat to our community does not get out. And that's what's happened, and we've seen it across the country. Catherine Stein is an example.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
Any other questions, members of the Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, thank you for coming in. I'm not sure exactly I followed what the relevance of the murder was. Exactly what you just put on.
Well, he did 364 days. If you had,
Again, the relevance to the question asked, I didn't follow it. The question I guess I have for you is on 3034, the NICE program, which you detailed here. And I think this is obviously a direct response to your floating of the NICE proposal, which raised the hackles because you propose not sending inmates to disaster cleanups, but to construct the wall, right? I mean, that's where this came from. That's the genesis of this debate that's been occurring on this Beacon Hill as well as the Capitol Hill.
well, if I could just clarify that, that's not, what happened was during my inaugural address, I was speaking about Project NICE. That project, there were people who latched on to it for the political part of the wall. Forget the wall. Let's talk Flint, Michigan, Lane Heights. It's the same, it wasn't meant to focus on just the wall. The wall happened to be one of the big infrastructure projects going on.
So I'm getting to my point, and trust me, I think a lot of us like if we got the wall. The issue that I have is that you testified that passing this allows the subjective intentions of legislators to be paramount. Isn't the NICE program that you're proposing putting in the subjective intent of sheriffs in the place of what I think is a legislative prerogative?
No, not at all. We do these projects all over the country, and frankly, there are compacts already in place that this legislature passed in the 60s for us to go to all the New England states. This simply broadens it out nationally. So this is nothing new. I've been working on Project NICE long before the wall was even considered. I've been working on it 3 or 4 years before Donald Trump even thought about getting elected. The reason I brought up about subjectivity was the comments were made in the newspaper by legislators that this is clearly an anti-Trump sort of initiative, will prevent anything to do with the wall. And they used the president's name several times in the newspaper. These are legislators who were against it.
Yeah, and again, I guess I'd leave out the current administration altogether in the concept of what you're doing or trying to do with the NICE program, and look to more of an objective rationale. I think when you quoted the majority leader, everyone can empathize with that understanding, right? That we're going to use inmates to go respond to national tragedies, to go respond to natural disasters. I don't think anyone's going to quibble with that. I think when you start getting into the realm of putting them towards certain policy areas, construction of certain facilities, for example, that's where the legislature gets a little nervous or anxious, and I think that, again, would be the prerogative of the legislature.
I can appreciate that. I would only say that the program exists to save taxpayers money when, for example, Flint, Michigan, they've never been able to lay those pipes because of the costs associated. If we can get inmates who are going to get involved in a national initiative from around the country to participate, much like those firefighters, if they can go there and do something. We did it with the Haiti project. We actually had all our police departments be drop-off boards for clothing, and the inmates every single day for a month. We had military transport boxes, sorted them, and every day they went back to the unit. They got to see on the television and the news, wondering whether or not those toys or clothes were going to any one of those people they were seeing in Haiti who were suffering. But they even said to me at one point, you know, Sheriff, put us on a plane, in a heartbeat, we'll go there and help you build Haiti, rebuild Haiti. And you know something? Anyone who suggests that this is about slavery and forced labor, look, talk to the inmates. Because you know what? Their inmates will tell you and have said on national television, who are these people to tell me that I am better off sitting in a 7-foot by 10-foot cell all day? I'm going out to do good things for people, and that makes me feel good, and I'm making a difference, and I like doing that. So, you know, I live in this world with these inmates. I know what they like and what they don't like, and imposing people's impressions on these programs without having the direct knowledge or the input from the inmates themselves really doesn't do justice to what is really going on.
Any further questions from members of the panel? Representative Barrington is here. Welcome, Representative Barrington. Sure, I think we're done with the testimony. Thank you so
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Committee.
Let's see, I've got Representative Dubois.
Thank you, Chairwoman Cronin and Chairman Brownsberger for hosting this hearing and allowing me to testify. I'm here in support of H3033, an act relative to enforcement of federal law, and H3034, an act limiting the use of prison labor. Each of these bills will be a benefit to the 10th Plymouth District, Plymouth County, and those residing in the Commonwealth. Allowing state dollars to fund federal immigration law with regard to 287G agreements takes away funds from municipal government, from education, and a myriad of other critical priorities of the Commonwealth. As an example, the Plymouth County Sheriff has a considerable budget to operate the prisons, and at his discretion under 287G, he can utilize these state dollars to enforce federal immigration law for ICE. Literally speaking, 287G agreements limit federal dollars from implementation. So when you sign the agreements, you are agreeing to utilize other than federal dollars to implement the 287G agreements. And that is different from the partnerships that many prisons have with ICE. So as I understand it, H3033 wouldn't limit all ICE relationships. There are many sheriffs that currently work with ICE and do not have 287G agreements. What 287G initially really does is it almost deputizes the prison guards and those that sign into this agreement to implement ICE in our communities. That hasn't really happened here in Massachusetts until the recent presidential administration, but it has happened in southwest United States, and it has been found to have a chilling effect on the communities and immigrants' relationship with law enforcement. So even if a sheriff has a 287G agreement, immigrants in all the states or all the towns and cities around the sheriff, the immigrants there then become more fearful of police. We're seeing immigrants not reporting rape for fear and lack of understanding that maybe the police are involved in the 287G agreements. This isn't made up. You can look at stats from Arizona and California to prove that immigrants are not reporting rape, murder, assault for fear that the police that show up to investigate these crimes are also going to be implementing federal immigration law and they will be deported. So I would just hate to see a day in Brockton where an immigrant is afraid to call the Brockton Police Department and one of my constituents is being murdered or raped. And their fear for their own deportation keeps them from reporting the crime that they see. So I ask you to swiftly pass both of these bills with a favorable recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Dubois, for your time and testimony. Other questions from members of the Council? Representative Barrington.
Yes, I do have a question. I appreciate your opinion, and I know you feel very passionate about it. The concern that I have, though, is this issue actually has come up under several names over the last 6 or 7 years, and it was at one point called the Trust Act, and the issue being similar to what you said, that people could not trust law enforcement if they felt they were going to comply with ICE regulations. But as far as I have understood it, the only way you are put into the system is if you are the perpetrator, not the victim. So I know that people said this will cause this, but we never actually started data that victims. I don't know that anybody has presented any kind of firm data with regard to victims, because victims, in order for this system to sort of take place, the person has to be fingerprinted, is my understanding, and that they then go into a database. Whereas I presume that was how it was when the Trust Act was first proposed to us. But you're saying that they are somehow in a database without putting in their fingerprints at this point?
To answer your broader question, 287G agreements are different than the Trust Act. So the Trust Act had elements where local law enforcement would agree that if they were investigating a crime and someone was reporting a crime, they would not check that person against immigration to see if their legal status, ask them for papers, if someone was reporting a crime. 287G agreements are agreements that law enforcement can go into with ICE, which more or less deputizes their employees to act as ICE officials, 100% in the way any ICE official could act. So they are separate. There is something called, I think it's the Safe Communities Act, that is different from the Trust Act. Because if you read them both, they're very different. It stops a Muslim registry and it precludes 287G agreements. But what 287G agreements do, it literally allows law enforcement that are in the sheriff's example, are supposed to do care and custody of inmates. And it allows them to do, of course, care and custody of inmates and act as ICE agents. And the agreement on the federal government side says that you cannot use federal dollars to implement 287G agreements. Now, there are many different agreements that ICE has with sheriffs and law enforcement, and this law doesn't limit those agreements. So the Suffolk County Sheriff has a lot of partnerships with ICE, but does not have a 287G agreement, which means that his employees are not, for lack of a better word, implementing ICE law as like a ICE employee would do. So there are multiple different ways that ICE can partner with communities. And so when the sheriff gave that example of all the money that was brought to the state through these relationships, all that money came to Massachusetts outside of the 287G agreements. So we could still get all that money that he talks about without deputizing his employees to act as ICE officials in our communities. And it isn't me saying this, I'm not passionate about it. It is just practical. When you see what happens in California, where there are immigrants not reporting rape, that is something we should all be concerned about.
But my understanding is still does. The only way that the sheriffs would be no different than our regular law enforcement in that ICE gets the information through the process of the arraignment.
So with respect, I don't think that you have a thorough understanding of what the 287G agreement is and what it says. So this law would not limit relationships with ICE. When you're fingerprinted, your fingerprints go to the FBI and they go to ICE already. What the 280, and so what you're thinking about is when they're brought into the custody and then can they run additional databases. That's one thing. What it also does is it allows them to arrest people, to ask them for papers. And in Brockton, we have Plymouth County sheriffs that do traffic directionals. Who's to say once they are ICE deputized that they're not going to, when they talk to someone that's driving by, ask them for their papers. ICE agents can do that. So when an ICE agent arrests someone for an illegal behavior, say they bust in for a drug bust into an apartment, not only are they going to pick up the person that they're going after, but anybody else in that apartment that is undocumented, they take in.
I guess, again, I don't know of the law that would allow them to do that. So far, I think the law only applies for as far as law enforcement's ability to put their name into the system. They have to have arrested them.
So what I will do is I will follow up with exactly what the 287G allows, which is much more than just running in a database. And then once you see that it deputizes these individuals to more or less be ICE agents, I assume that then you'll have a better understanding and maybe come around, or maybe not. But it does much more than what you're saying it does.
Right, I understand what you're saying about 287G, but before you even get to that point, these people have to have been in the system, in my understanding, because they've been arrested.
No, that isn't. So this is just about the 287G for me. I am not asking or trying to control the sheriff's budget or how they implement other relationships with ICE. All I am saying is that 287G agreements require, when they're signed, that the partner to ICE says that they're not going to use federal dollars to implement it. So right now, where are they going to get the money but the state taxpayer? And it requires some other things, but what it doesn't do is everything that's happening right now without 287G agreements can keep going on. So I think that there's maybe the panel, thank you for having this hearing, will become more educated about the elements of 287G and have a better understanding of how we limit our own state dollars. I mean, Brockton has a $16 million school funding deficit. And so the idea that the Plymouth County Sheriff is going to use his budget to implement federal immigration law without any reports to any of us on what percent is actually used to do federal immigration law, when those dollars could be going to educating students in my community so they would have a less likelihood from going to prison, for me, says that we're misusing our state dollars if we allow them to be used for federal immigration law. If the federal government wants to hire more ICE agents and place them in Massachusetts, they have every right to do so. And we have every right to say that we would like Massachusetts dollars to be funded Massachusetts and state and municipal government and not implementing federal immigration law. And if that's what we want to do, I think it should be above board and on the table, and that every 287G agreement signer should have to give a report so the taxpayer can see what percent of the money that we're putting to prisons is actually going to enforce federal immigration law. And then I think the legislators will have a backlash against that because people want the funding from the state to go to education and public safety in their communities, not so much enforcing federal immigration law.
Mr. Chairman, a couple of questions, please. You just spoke about a drug bust, and the police officers walked in and they found somebody who was selling drugs, I guess, illegally. And so my question is not about any immigrations. My question is, if someone was in there with an outstanding warrant for some other crime, whatever that could be, assault and battery, armed robbery, should the police take any action against those people?
So, my example was when ICE does a raid. So when ICE agents do a raid and they are after a target, whoever they come upon in the course of the raid, be it a 12-year-old child who's undocumented, a 50-year-old man who has no criminal record beyond at all, anyone that is undocumented can be taken into custody. And that's what I was referring to. So it's one thing to allow the federal deputized ICE agents to have that authority, but there's quite another that we should make, if we're going to make a decision about 287G agreements, should know we are deputizing sheriffs, prison guards, law enforcement to operate as ICE agents. So not only are they taking in a criminal, right now, if you're a criminal and you're undocumented, you should be deported. I support that 100%, and I'm really offended by statements that say otherwise. What I am saying is, if right now ICE is allowed to take not only the criminal that they're looking for, but anyone else they happen upon in the street, or for that matter, anyone they happen upon in the course of their workday, your name doesn't have to be on a list if you're an ICE agent. And the question is, do you want citizens in Massachusetts looking at every police officer or every sheriff who's directing traffic saying, oh my gosh, if I talk to this individual, they can ask me for papers, and then I can be deported with no criminal record and not breaking any of our criminal code. So that is what you have to ask yourself. It isn't just a Republican, Democrat, pro-police, anti-police issue. I'm pro-police. I just don't think that prison guards and police officers should be implementing federal immigration law. So it's not that we're against police, it's not that we're pro-criminal, it's just that if you're a police officer, implement police law in your municipality and state, and if you're a federal agent of ICE, implement ICE and the regulations around that department. And we shouldn't mix the two. It's like making a firefighter a police officer as well.
So, thank you. So as far as if there was a drug bust and the police went in and there was someone with an outstanding warrant, nothing to do with immigration, you would agree then that that person should be arrested?
I don't understand the direction of the question. I mean, I don't know what you're trying to say here.
I'm just asking a question. You
I-
can answer it any way, you can answer it any way you want. I'm just
So
answering.
in Brockton, we actually have drug busts, and I have always supported police, and that is just a direct truth. So if you were
I
a
don't want to answer the
criminal,
question, that's fine.
I'm answering it right now.
Okay.
If you were a criminal, sure, you should be arrested.
Okay, that's fine.
That's what you should be, sure. And if you were a drug dealer, sure, you should be arrested. And I'm kind of offended by any accusation, reference by you or anybody else that says that someone that doesn't want ICE, police or prison guards deputized as ICE agents is somehow anti-law enforcement.
I haven't made any statement about what my position is. I simply asked you a question.
Thank you.
The
Thank you for
second
the
question that I have is that you mentioned that you were concerned about local aid in your communities and that the money that was being spent on what is being proposed by the sheriff would somehow increase the amount of local aid. How much
No, I
money?
didn't say that.
Well, you made a reference to local aid saying that rather than having money spent on the program that the sheriff was spending it on, you would prefer that that money be used in the city of Brockton to educate people. Maybe I...
No. So ICE
So I
has a lot...
apologize if I misinterpreted.
I'll try to interest it. ICE has a lot of agreements that do subsidize those who implement them in the prison, so they pay per day for holding prisoners and different things like that. The 287G agreements are different in that they restrict federal dollars from implementation of these actions. So they're different. So I think that if we do start having 287G agreements across the board on all the sheriff's departments, we are going to see that their budgets are going to start becoming larger. And to date, I mean, I think the agreements weren't signed so many months ago. We don't know how much money has been spent implementing the 287G agreements, as opposed to the other ICE agreements that are reimbursable from the federal government. Actions taken on the 287G agreement are not.
Any more questions from members of the panel? Representative Boyce,
Thank you.
thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you.
Representative Purvis.
Good afternoon, committee chairs, members, staff, everyone. Thank you for taking me out of order. I'm Denise Provo. I represent the sanctuary community of Somerville, which I will point out is not in any way a sanctuary for individuals who have committed crimes. I am here to speak in favor of both House Bills 3033 and 3034. I will not spend much time on the bill to block the sending of inmates to the Mexican border. Insofar as that would be done involuntarily, I don't think it would pass constitutional muster. I will focus instead on the 287G agreement prohibition, which, as has been raised, it is a bill which could be costly for communities. The exact cost is a bit speculative, although the fact that only 40 sheriff's departments nationwide have entered into these agreements, I think, suggests the reluctance of many communities to take on these costs. But it's about a lot more than costs, as far as I'm concerned, from my point of view as an attorney who long ago was an attorney for the city of Somerville. It's really about due process of law and the deputization of local law enforcement to become arms of ICE and enforcing a law which they are not trained to understand, I think, is a real problem. In March, I think we all read about the arrest and for deportation of 5 individuals in the city of Lawrence who were showing up for their green card interviews. Interestingly, one of these gentlemen has just been released after a judicial hearing. I understand another was released previously. The gentleman who was released, admittedly in the country unlawfully, was able to go home to his U.S. citizen wife and 4 U.S. citizen children. Faces further action, I expect, but you do not get a nuanced approach to the administration of justice from feet on the ground necessarily, whether they are ICE agents or local law enforcement who've been deputized to serve as ICE agents. And I would suggest that part of our reason to be wary of these agreements goes back to the DNA of Massachusetts and to the Personal Liberty Act of 1855, which prohibited state agents from enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act. My time has gone. I thank you for your kind attention, and I will follow up in any way that you find helpful.
Thank you very much, Representative Rose. Any questions from members of the panel? Representative Harrington.
Thank you for your testimony. And the only thing I'm still having a problem with here is that this whole concept of the 287G, that is nothing new. I mean, that was under the Bill Clinton administration that this got enacted to be able to make these types of agreements. I think the thing is, it just seems like if there was a law to try to prohibit something rather than throwing away the baby with the bathwater, it seems that what people are more saying is they don't want it with regard to prison inmates building a wall in Mexico, which is a very controversial issue. But we've had this system for over 20 years that they're able to make these agreements. So I just don't understand. It seems like the issue is more defined relative to the present environment and the law. You know, just to call out the elephant in the room. It's more the wall that I think is disputed. But we've always allowed, since 1996, I think it was enacted fully in 97, but since that time, we've had these 287G agreements with law enforcement.
If I may respond.
Please.
Thank you. The wall is a separate issue and a separate bill, or you know, the use of inmates on out-of-state projects of any kind. As far as these agreements, you're right. They've been in existence. There were pilot programs at one point that did have some money in the pot as an inducement. But I think that there is a real concern about the lawlessness which has been introduced into immigration policy under the current administration that has resulted in many lawsuits, applications for injunctive relief. And I think that kind of a sentiment at the top gets communicated down through the ranks. And even though there were a record number of deportations in the Obama administration, I think if you compare time period for time period, deportations are up quite a bit since then, and some of the softening policies have been abandoned, such as the policy of not prioritizing individuals who hadn't committed crimes, and the policy of that resulted in the creation of DACA, the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, that is being retrenched now. There's been at least one deportation of someone with DACA status and no criminal record. I am aware of at least one student in a Massachusetts university who has been deported. So it's a different tenor, and I think that's the reason for the heightened level of concern.
No further questions. Thank you very much, Representative Provost. Representative Mike Connors.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Mike Connolly, and I'm here to speak in full support and to echo the sentiments of my colleagues, Representative Cabral, Representative Dubois, and Representative Provo, in support of H3033, an act relative to enforcing federal law which would prevent the use of state funds on these 287G programs, and also H3034, which would limit the use of prison labor. Now, I have the tremendous honor of representing the communities of Cambridge and Somerville, and as Rep. Provo alluded to, we have a long, proud, decades-long history of being sanctuary cities in Cambridge and Somerville. And I really, just want to convey to you how many messages, how many emails I get on a daily basis from constituents and from residents who ask us if we can pass the Safe Communities Act. I've gone on record to say that if I could vote for any legislation right now, it would be the Safe Communities Act. And I understand the Safe Communities Act is not before us this afternoon, but this bill, H3033, would help accomplish some of the goals of the Safe Communities Act. And so, I think that it really is abhorrent that we would use our state resources to comply and to cooperate with the anti-immigrant, xenophobic agenda of the Donald Trump administration. I think back a couple months ago, Chief Brian Keyes of Chelsea came here representing law enforcement, and he explained to us that, as a chief of police in the city of Chelsea, he wanted, his officers to be focusing on crime in the community. He didn't want to see his staff and his officers doing the work of ICE. Let's let ICE do that work. Let's ask our law enforcement to enforce the law. Regarding H3034, I don't think there's anything nice about Project Nice. I heard the sheriff say that this was an opportunity for free labor. Well, I do think there's a need for labor in our country. I actually think back to the Works Progress Administration. As far as I know, in the Great Depression, the program wasn't let's round up prisoners and put them to work. The program was there are millions of people in our country who need work, and we can actually come up with programs to provide opportunities for employment for people. So I certainly appreciate the opportunity to share these sentiments, and I ask the committee to please carefully consider this legislation and report it favorably for a vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there questions from members of the panel? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I think we're going to go to a Bureau panel now. With the Amy Gardner. This, by the way, will be the last panel in this segment of the hearing. After this panel, we're going to go through the rest of the topics and then come back. But before we do that, we'll have a little conversation on this issue.
There were a couple people's names that were on there, and I can't remember what they were.
We got Laura Rotella, Damaris Lopez, Gladys Ortiz, Lava Dimanas, Sarah Lindell.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, before we start, can I ask you a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So we've had several panels. I think the only folks that we've had who've given testimony that has been against the legislation was the was the sheriff. And we've had, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 topic folks who come in favor of the legislation. But before we broke, is there any chance you could have anyone who had a opposite view to have an opportunity to testify?
You know what it is? We had a series of representatives who all came in. I see that there, so we didn't try to skew it down, but there was more representatives who took it from your point of view, you'd have a better balance.
Mr. Chairman, I wasn't suggesting, I was just pointing out in the hopes that maybe before we broke, we could have 1 or 2 panels on the other side. That's
I can tell you what, I do see that it so happens that one more individual who's next up, he is opposed, so we'll call them after this guy, and then we are going to go to the next, the other issues and get back to us. Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Sharon Brownsberger and Chairwoman Cronin. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Amy Glunder, and I represent the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. We have a membership of over 130 organizations, including community health centers, legal service providers, refugee settlement agencies, and a host of organizations that provide direct services to immigrants and refugees in Massachusetts. So we offer this testimony in support of H3033, an act relative to enforcing federal law. This important bill would effectively end so-called 287G collaboration agreements between Massachusetts law enforcement agencies and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, or ICE. As has been said, these voluntary agreements allow ICE to deputize law enforcement personnel with the powers of immigration agents, leaving them free to arrest, detain, and deport people. And not just in our communities, but also our jails and lockups. They are allowed under federal law, depending on the agreement, to work in the community as well. So this undermines community policing policies that depend on positive relationships between police and the people they protect and serve. The Trump administration has called for the expansion of 287G programs across the country as part of an aggressive immigration enforcement agenda that relies on conscripting state and local resources to do the federal government's job. This agenda is already having far-reaching consequences in our immigrant communities and raises major public safety, public health, and civil rights concerns. I think it's important to point out that nothing in this bill or other pro-immigrant legislation that we support would stop law enforcement from engaging in prosecuting, holding, or investigating criminals. What it does is it prohibits them from engaging in immigration, in arresting or deporting people for immigration violations, which is not the same thing as a crime in most cases. The executive orders that were issued in January effectively target all undocumented immigrants for deportation, including long-term, law-abiding members of our communities. Massachusetts is home to over 1 million immigrants, of whom an estimated 200,000 are undocumented. Nationally, 2/3 of undocumented immigrants have been here over 10 years, meaning that most have U.S. citizen children. These immigrants are fully integrated into our communities as the parents, siblings, or other relatives of lawful residents or U.S. citizens. The fear in these communities right now is pervasive. Advocates estimate, and realistic, advocates estimate that in Boston alone, 500 children lose a parent to deportation annually. Can I go on? If we limit the rest?
Are you speaking for the panel, or are you
I'm offering an introduction to the rest of the testimony that we're going to have, no?
Okay, well, I'm going to ask everybody to
shorten it up? Okay.
If you're eating into their time, if you, to the extent you testify beyond the 3 minutes.
Okay, I'll stop.
Okay.
That's fine.
All right.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Laura Rotillo. I'm here on behalf of the American Civil Liberties Union of Massachusetts, the ACLU. And I just want to begin by clarifying a few of the questions that have been raised about how the 287G program works and how it doesn't work. Immigration agents, federal immigration agents, have broad powers to arrest, detain, and put into deportation proceedings people they encounter. And this doesn't need to be somebody who's been arrested. I know that there's some confusion because of the whole fingerprinting issue, but people who are just out and about in the community, but an ICE agent has reason to believe is deportable, that person is vulnerable to being picked up, arrested, put into deportation. So it's not just about people in custody. Now that's the authority of ICE agents. The 287G program deputizes our local officials to do that work for the federal government. They have the same powers as an immigration agent does to question people, to ask for papers, to put people into deportation proceedings. And the cost is borne by our localities. Except for paying for a limited training program, the federal government does not reimburse us. Now, we don't have numbers from Massachusetts because although these contracts are decades old, we've only had contracts in the counties for several months here. So we haven't had those numbers reported, but I can tell you that we can learn from other states. In one county in North Carolina, it cost that county $5.3 million to implement this program in the first year. In Virginia, they had to raise property taxes and borrow from a rainy day fund to fund the $6.4 million that it cost in the first year. Those are costs borne by the localities. In addition, when something goes wrong, and inevitably things do, there's a liability that the locality has to meet as well. They could be sued by somebody because they've been picked up mistakenly. And this can really happen because there's very little supervision and transparency. So the federal government trains our local staff, but then it doesn't supervise them. So these are issues that we really need to think about the funding, how we're going to fund this, the liability to our counties, and the fact that, of course, it does break down community trust, as we have heard. And this is why places like the the Association of Chiefs of Police and the Major City Chiefs Association have come out against this program. So thank you.
For your testimony, thank you for keeping it on task. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, and thank you. My name is Damaris Velasquez, and I am the Director of Programs of Agencia Alpha, a grassroots organization located in Boston. And I'm speaking on behalf of my community. And the reason is because I am supporting the bill H3033, because we need to start the collaboration between the state and local institutions and immigration enforcement, because it is causing fear among our society in general. In our office, we see about 2,000 cases yearly, and we get to talk to these people. So I can say that I can speak on behalf of my community because I spend time with them. I cry with them and I talk to them. And today I'm speaking on behalf of two particular cases. One of them is little Marco, who is 5 years old. And he was born here. His mom is a legal permanent resident. And he had already asked his mom not to speak Spanish on the streets because the police could come and get her and deport her. I'm also speaking on behalf of my own nephew, who is 13 years old. He was born here in Natick. His parents are naturalized U.S. citizens, and he is very afraid of the police because he doesn't look that American. So he's afraid that he's going to be detained. I'm not talking about money. I'm not talking about if you talk to your inmates or not, and if you know them or not. I'm talking about my community that is afraid, people who are legal permanent residents, people who are citizens. I'm not even talking about only documented community who is full of fear. I'm talking about this community who is just sending us the message that if we don't pass legislations like this, if we don't start the conversations about this, we're missing the trust between those who can protect us, the police officers, but also we are creating we're creating racism and people who are afraid of being racial profiled because we don't look that American. So I just want to touch that area and let you know maybe it's not about money. This is the only thing that I agree with Sheriff Hudson when he says it's not about money. The protection of our community requires more than that. I agree with that. But then again, it's up to us to pass legislation that is going to prove the values that we don't support racism and we don't support racial profiling. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
My name is Maria Rodriguez. I'm just here to tell you a little bit about what I've been going through. I've experienced domestic violence for 9 years. All types of violations of any kind you can imagine. My children were mistreated by my husband. I never called the police, I never went to court. Because the fear that I live, because my husband would say, if you call the police, I will report you. If I would look for help from the police, if you go to any court,
Yo soy presidente americano y tengo el poder para que usted pueda ser deportado.
I am a legal permanent resident. Her husband will say, I have the power to deport you.
Mis hijos son ciudadanos y se quedan conmigo y usted va deportado.
My children are U.S. citizens, so they will stay here, but you will be deported.
Nunca tuve el valor de buscar ayuda con la policía.
I never had the valor to look for help from the police.
Ni busqué ninguna organización por el temor de ser deportado.
And I never looked from the help of any organization because I was afraid to be deported. Porque él siempre me amenazó con que la policía iba a hacer esto. Because my husband always threatened me that they will deport me, that they will do all these things to me.
Siempre me dijo, lo que pasa en estas 4 paredes, aquí se queda.
My husband would say, whatever happened within these 4 walls, that will stay here.
Cada vez que él me golpeaba, me maltrataba, al día siguiente me mandaba a arreglo electoral.
Every time my husband will beat me up or just be mean to me, the next day he will fix it by sending me flowers.
Hasta que en un momento él llamó a la policía y me mandó a la policía a la iglesia donde yo me encontraba.
Up until the one day where I was at a church, he called the police and he asked the police to go and look for me at that church.
Ese fue el momento en que yo me armé de valor y dije, hasta aquí nomás, y hablé con la policía.
And that was the moment when I had to raise the courage and I had to speak to the police on my behalf.
Tengo las tarjetas de los envíos de las flores que él decía.
I have those little cards that my husband will send me with those flower arrangements that he will send me after he will beat me up.
Al igual como yo, hay muchas mujeres que están siendo abusadas de violencia doméstica y no buscan la ayuda de la policía.
And just like me, there's so many other women that are being mistreated and being beat up by their husband, but they don't look for help because they're afraid.
Por el temor a ser deportadas.
And because they're afraid to be deported.
Les pido por favor que no permitan que la policía tenga ese poder.
I urge you please not to allow the police to have that power to deport people like me.
Para que no llegue ninguna deportación.
So that I wouldn't be deported.
Thank you very much for coming forward with your personal story. There's going to be people on both sides of every issue. Thank you again so much for coming forward with your personal story. Are there questions from members of the panel? Okay, all right, well, fine, okay. Oh, that's fine, we'll take questions at the end, but go ahead, who's next?
Hello. I would like to begin by thanking the chairs and members of the Joint Committee for hosting this hearing. My name is Laura Germanis, and I am a family physician at Cambridge Health Alliance and in East Boston, and a fellow at the Harvard School of Public Health. I'm also testifying on behalf of a network of local healthcare and legal providers called the Greater Boston Health and Law Immigrant Solidarity Network. We're a group of over 100 individuals and rapidly growing, and I'm here to support age 30-33. One morning, in a local emergency department, a Spanish-speaking woman carried in a 14-month-old baby who wasn't breathing. We rushed to resuscitate the toddler and got a heart rate back after 10 minutes, but it wasn't fast enough to save the baby. The question which lingered in all of our minds was, why didn't the woman call 911? Regardless of the details of this specific case, we should all be able to agree on one thing. Fear of local police collaboration with ICE should never prevent someone from calling 911. I frequently hear from patients that they hate calling 911, anybody, American patients, for a health issue and have the fire and police department show up with the ambulance. Imagine if there is an undocumented immigrant in the house. It doesn't matter if they haven't committed a crime. There are a lot of people who sit in fear of their homes just being afraid to see or be seen by a local law enforcement official. And these kind of 287G agreements are making that fear substantive. And that kind of fear is deadly. But that very kind of fear of local police collaboration with immigration enforcement, translates into fear of all public institutions and is gripping our neighborhoods, schools, clinics, and hospitals at this very moment. A few months ago, I saw a 17-month-old toddler who stopped eating solid food after watching his father be arrested by ICE in his own home. His father had been arrested in a work dispute after his employer refused to pay him for a contracting job. And once again, you don't need to be convicted of the crime. All you have to be is convicted of it. According to a UMass Labor Center report from 2015, wage theft is an epidemic in Massachusetts residential construction. Fear of law enforcement collaboration with ICE makes people afraid to go to their medical appointments, to send children to school, and prevents workers from demanding fair pay and safe working conditions. We see the important connections between these issues and the way that fear impacts health in our clinics at Cambridge Health Alliance and throughout Eastern Mass. Police collaboration with ICE makes our communities less safe. According to a study by the Center for American Progress, sanctuary counties in fact have stronger economies and lower crime rates than non-sanctuary counties. Bierkoff once said, medicine is a social science and politics is nothing else but medicine on a large scale. Legislators, you are the ones with the prescription pen in your hand, and as guardians of the public health, we urge you to support HR 3033 as a significant first step in ending all state participation in federal immigration enforcement, in addition to supporting the Safe Communities Act. I urge the members of this community to support this because it will make our state safer and our economy stronger, and to help ensure that children and families can feel safe accessing public resources regardless of immigration status, and will promote the physical and psychological safety of all community members. Thank you.
Okay. Now, I know you have one more member of the panel, is that right? How many friends? One. Okay, what I'm going to do, because I know exactly what the schedule is, I'm going to ask Representative Broder to step in for a moment and give his quick testimony. You want to do that?
That would be terrific. I appreciate
I can see the sweat flowing off of his forehead.
It's because I'm bald.
Yeah. As he contemplates what the clock says. But you don't have to get up. You can stay right where you are if you like.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. I am here to speak about the need for a public guardian here in Massachusetts, and I'm delighted that so many people are here with an interest in this important topic. And it is terrific that there are a lot of people here, because what we are talking about is providing a needed service to a group within the Commonwealth that is truly unrepresented. It's sometimes called the unfriended. We're talking about folks that might not have family or friend ties in the community and suffer a cognitive impairment or some other issue that does not allow them to deal with their personal legal affairs. I understand that Attorney General Harshbarger already spoke, so I will try to keep it even briefer than I originally intended. I come to this issue because I used to be counsel at the Executive Office of Health Affairs, which deals with an important subset of the groups that would be served by this bill. Simply put, we have this population within Massachusetts, probably numbers, depending on the estimates, somewhere between 41 and 4,700 folks. They truly have no one but the legislature and advocacy groups to fall back on for help. So we have situations where these folks, again, without any ties to the community, may need some kind of legal decision made on their behalf, and then come in the context of potentially an admission to a hospital from a skilled nursing facility, and then it comes time to discharge that person out, either back to the SNF or perhaps to some other kind of care. There's no one, in some cases, that can speak with legal authority for that person. Well, what does that mean? It very often means that the hospital or provider will have to go into court, find a guardian, and make arrangements to put that decision into force. That usually happens in a time, essentially, of crisis. What this would do what many other states have done, is set up a public guardian. So under this bill, we would have a very small entity within Health and Human Services that would provide a supervisory function for, and this is probably the best part, a privately financed nonprofit that would actually perform the services, that would serve as a public guardian. We have these folks, and I should compliment Senator Green, who is my partner in crime on this bill, for her important work and her knowledge as a practitioner in the area about how important it is to establish this. I'm happy to say we have several experts that you will hear from later in the hearing, hopefully not too much later, that can tell you a little bit more about the nuts and bolts of state practices across the country, and in more detail how the office would function and how the need has been dealt with in other jurisdictions.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions for Representative Broder? Thank you, Representative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to acknowledge the presence of the Assistant Majority Leader Cream on the committee. So from here, where we're going to go is we're going to finish this count. You're up next. Then we're going to take one witness who is Paul Peter, S.K. Peter from Watertown. And then we're going to go to Representative Khan and the issue of healthcare of child marriage. Thank you.
Thank you to the chairs and members of the Joint Committee for taking time to hear from us all today. My name is Sarah Lytle, and I'm an immigration staff attorney at the Justice Center of Southeast Massachusetts, a subsidiary of South Coastal County's Legal Services. So we are the main civil legal service provider to all of Southeast Massachusetts. I'm here to testify in support of House Bill 3033 because we have already seen the very real and negative consequences of these 287G agreements being signed. Right before the 2016 presidential election, we were hearing that members of the Ecuadorian community in Brockton, many undocumented immigrants, were being viciously attacked. One member of the community, a hardworking roofer, was beat on 2 or 3 separate occasions, the last time resulting in a hospitalization. Teenage girls were being taunted and harassed in the parks on the weekend. And yet, people were not going to police out of fear. The anti-immigrant sentiment that the presidential campaign inspired caused these individuals to retreat into their homes rather than report the crimes they were victim to, which would help not only themselves but the safety of the community as well. However, we had several meetings with Brockton Police Department and the Plymouth District Attorney, and they assured us on several occasions and assured the immigrant community at public meetings that immigration status has nothing to do with their investigations when you were a victim or a witness. We began to make some serious headway with the community, ensuring them that they could seek help from law enforcement if necessary. And similar conversations happened in New Bedford, another area we serve as well. Whatever progress had been made to convince the immigrant community that it is safe to call the police, whether they're attacked by a random stranger or surviving a years-long domestic violence situation, that progress was lost when our clients learned that Bristol and Plymouth County sheriffs signed on to 287G agreements. We hear now that domestic violence survivors are afraid to testify in open court or even to call the police in the first place. What's worse, we know I have a client whose abuser is threatening them, using these agreements to threaten them to their advantage to encourage or to disencourage people from calling the police. This is just the start of the ways that our immigrant clients are changing their lives in this new administration, and more so since the Bristol and Plymouth sheriffs have signed on to 287G agreements. We know that this bill will not stop ICE from doing their work in our counties, but will ensure that state taxpayer money does not go towards further insulating our immigrant neighbors and opening up the door to their further victimization. 287G agreements do not create more public safety. In fact, they harm public safety when people are afraid to go to law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there some questions for the members for the panel? Representative Harrington.
Thank you. I agree in large part. We obviously can't do anything about what ICE does as a federal organization, part of the federal government. What I'm wondering now is you said that it really went downhill after the meeting with the police and law enforcement people. Have there been a lot of incidences of people in the sheriff's office going to take people just by virtue of them being undocumented?
So as far as I know in Plymouth, the 287G agreement has been signed, but is not put into effect yet, so we can't, it's just the fear that has been created by knowing that law enforcement is signed on with the agreement.
Didn't they already have 287G agreements prior to that, though?
No. No.
Okay, I was under the understanding that they've been around since '96, they did.
No, there was no 287G agreement until Sheriff Hodgson and McDonald signed on after the election. And it's been seen in our community and in other communities as well that have had 287G agreements, the real chilling environment. Despite what is actually happening, it's a fear that our immigrant clients have when they know that there's a possibility that, but sometimes when victims call the police, they're the ones who end up getting arrested if they don't speak the language, and their abuser does. So that, if they get arrested, they would get fingerprinted, even though they are the victim in that case.
Right, but I guess so even if they sign these agreements right after, is there something that has to take place for those to be enacted?
They get training.
The law officers would have to get training by the federal government, and that's like a 403 training, and then they start implementing.
Okay, and then what would be the mechanism that I guess Sheriff Hodgson, if you don't mind, you can use an example. Would Sheriff Hodgson just be able to walk the streets of Brockton and pick people up then after that?
I can answer if you'd like me to.
No, let the sheriff answer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the way it works is no corrections people that are trained will be out on the streets. That's a complete misnomer. The only authority that they would have is within the walls of the prison after someone is arrested by the police department.
So they already have to be arrested before you're
They'd have to be arrested for a crime by a local police department, brought to either Plymouth or what have you. And the only other clarification I would make is that our decision to be part of 287G, as was Plymouth and Worcester at the time, was long before this election. It was so about 5 years ago at the time when ICE wasn't adding anymore.
And if I could just add, there are currently two different kinds of 287G agreements, two different models. One is the one that Sheriff Hodgson is talking about, which is the jail-based model, which only deputizes officers within the jail. The other model is called the task force model, which deputizes local police throughout the community. We did some years ago have one in Framingham that was it took about a year. And the Framingham police, after a year of doing that, pulled out because they said that it was actually really harming their community relations. So they had it for about a year, and to my knowledge, no other local police department has had it. But this bill would prevent, police state funding for any future 287G agreements. And what we've heard the Trump administration say is that they are going to be pushing these out more. They are going to be, pressuring cities and towns and counties into signing these 287G agreements, even though they had not been being used in the past.
Were any people in that Framingham model, I think you said Framingham, were any people actually detained and deported by those local police officers after they signed that 287G?
Yes, absolutely. I don't know the numbers, but yes.
Was that prior to Secure Communities Act or subsequent?
I believe that was during the Secure Communities Act. It was around 2015. I can follow up with the committee and get those facts out.
Representative Lott?
Thank you. Just two quick questions. Legal permanent residence, someone had described that earlier and then used the word arrested after it. A legal permanent resident cannot be. Tell me the circumstances by which a legal permanent resident could be arrested for an immigration violation.
I think the way to respond to that is that anybody who's not a citizen can be deported. So there are a whole list of reasons why a legal permanent resident could be arrested and deported. Criminal, threat to national security.
No, but simply by being, there was, the reason I'm asking, there seemed to be two distinctions, and I just want to make sure that I understand them. One was the legal permanent resident, and then I think in your testimony, Constable, you described someone getting arrested, being picked up and then arrested. So if you're a legal permanent resident, unless you have some kind of committed a crime, you just can't get arrested, or can you? That's what I just want to make sure there's a distinction. As opposed to someone who is, I think you used the term undocumented. So if someone's undocumented and they're picked up, can they get arrested? Is there a distinction?
I'm not sure if you're referring to what I said about a victim being arrested.
No, I think, to be honest with you, it wasn't your testimony. Okay. I think it was, earlier you had testified and you said that an undocumented got picked up and was arrested. So what were they arrested for? That was...
I was just citing...
No, it wasn't you. It was
okay.
It was the...
I'm not sure which part of my testimony you're referring to, but I guess I have two answers to that.
Yeah.
A legal permanent resident can be subject to deportation for a variety of reasons my colleague has pointed out. Some of those are because they have perhaps an old crime in their record that violates their legal permanent resident status, other ways to lose that status, and then they could be deportable.
For crimes, right? For
Most
crimes.
of those are crimes.
Okay.
They could be status like being absent from the country for a certain period of time, you could lose your legal permanent resident status. In addition, mistakes happen. So we have U.S. citizen clients who have been arrested and detained by ICE for sometimes days or months because, there's a mistake in the paperwork. We had one client in Rhode Island who the case went up to the First Circuit because she was a naturalized U.S. citizen and kept getting detained by ICE because the paperwork just wasn't, hadn't filtered up through the databases. So she, her naturalization was on the record, but ICE didn't have record of it, so they twice detained her and held her. So both, there is a deportability factor, but then also there are mistakes that cause U.S. citizens and legal permanent residents to be arrested by ICE.
Thank you.
Any further questions for this panel? Thank you very much for your testimony. We're going to have Peter Scudler. Go ahead. Are you here, Peter?
You want me to come along, right? My name is Carl Fernandez, and I think I can fill in a lot of this gap here.
All right, I'm going to permit, in the interest of balance, I'm going to allow you to testify. Then we are going to Representative Connex. Is this going to free now?
Well, we have other people too, they can join us, yes.
I'm taking two of you. I'm taking two of you. You're in the next group. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm going to take one more. I've got so much behind you. You've got to understand. I'll take two if you want to trade. You two. Go ahead. Go ahead. If you want to substitute something for yourself, that's fine.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon, committee members and other representatives present today. I appreciate the opportunity to present my testimony in opposition to H 3033, an act relative to enforcing federal law. I'm a long-time resident of Watertown, and I'm privileged for now to have a full-time position with a private sector information technology company based in Maine. I say for now because my position has not yet been outsourced to a foreign country, as so many of the other U.S. jobs have been for the past 10 to 20 years. Good afternoon, Chairman. Also, I appreciate Chairman Brownsberger's response to this in my own district, and I appreciate your not allowing me to come forward today. But I'm also concerned. I'm a private citizen, and I'm not aware of the process here. I'm concerned that there are other people that are here to testify against this legislation.
Everybody is going to have the chance to testify. It's just a matter of order.
Okay, thank you very much. So I took the afternoon off, unpaid from work, to oppose H 3033. I think I took the afternoon off without work compared to most of the people in this room. I think most of the people paid to support this. I also oppose H 3034, an act limiting the use of prison labor, which appears to be a tongue-in-cheek legislation and therefore is not a good use of time and taxpayer resources. Let's be honest, more accurate wording of the H 3033 bill are an act relative to circumventing federal law, or an act relative to limiting enforcing federal law, or an act relative to stopping 287G. Since November of 2016, towns and cities have been besieged by sanctuary town and sanctuary city movements. Despite what the lawyers and city administrators tell the people, sanctuary or welcoming status violates federal law. The latter is just a cynical aim to continue to receive federal funds while the towns otherwise break the law. It's bad enough that there are city councilors and administrators throughout the Commonwealth actively encouraging people to violate federal law. It's worse that the law breaking has risen to the state legislative level. 287G has been in place since Governor Romney, and one wonders why it was not in place before. If lawmakers really want to enforce laws, shouldn't they empower law enforcement to do so? If lawmakers really want to solve crimes, shouldn't they allow law enforcement the tools to solve the crimes? Can anyone imagine a surgeon to perform surgery without access to volumes of medical information to patient histories? What H 3033 does is deny access to information by law enforcement to solve crimes. I'm aware that the people proposing the sanctuary cities and these bills these days are doing so in reflex to what happened in November elections. But is reflex justification enough to put citizens at great risk? Tell that to the family of the Worcester school teacher who was brutally murdered. I urge this committee to oppose H 3033, which will deny law enforcement access to records they need and have had for years to solve crimes. If anything, our society is even more complicated and hostile today, so constraining law enforcement this way makes things even worse. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Hernandez.
My name is Carlos Armando Hernandez. I will be the next congressman for the 6th District of Massachusetts. I am oh my God, I'm losing my mind here. Okay. I came to this country legally. You know, one of the things you guys keep mixing is basically this immigrants and so forth. I'm sorry, there's two words here. You're either legal or illegal. If you're illegal, you broke the law. And I'm a veteran. I love my country. I love what it stood for. I love when I went to school and I was taught that basically we're supposed to be a nation of laws. Enforce the laws. Federal law comes down to you. They should be enforcing the law. They should be working with ICE, should be working with federal government to uphold the law. Now, how many people have to die? Americans, basically citizens and legal permanent residents, have to die before you guys, how many What's the amount? How many have to die? I mean, in regards to you guys better start protecting the American citizens and the legal resident, the legal permanent resident in Massachusetts. You know, we've got MS-13 going like crazy up in my area. As right now, I'm getting the data. I am going to take that seat. You know, I've been wanting to run for quite some time, but right now I'm so tired of what you guys are doing to my country, to my state. I've lived in Massachusetts since 1969. I joined the Navy, and basically regards to, you should be enforcing the laws on the books right now, because regards to, you guys, I thought you, Massachusetts, regard to secure communities, you guys were trying to basically put on this thing to actually protect illegals. I'm sorry, they're illegal, they broke the law. I apologize for the girl that had the permanent resident, she basically should have called the cops, and that would have stopped, and the guy would have been gone. And this is basically, you know, one side scaring people into believing that the police are the bad people. They're not. I've let the police even since the day I got here. As a matter of fact, most of them actually used to come and see me all the time when I was a kid and so forth. Because, you know what? If you're following the laws, you got no problems. You know, I do not get it. I mean, I don't know what is Massachusetts thinking with. I mean, you guys got to stop this. You can't keep going about, you're worried about the children. I'm sorry, what about my children? My family took a great loss with the Boston Marathon, okay? So in regards to it, you know, that was my brother's nephew that was lost. And now the whole family is basically, every time we meet, it's a messed up situation. Those people should have not been here. They had 3 chances to actually get those guys beforehand. I've got a lot of passion in regards to this. And I'm just getting started. And I'm basically getting ready. And I am going to take that congressman, he's gone because in regards to, but you guys should oppose this 33 and 34. Okay?
Thank you, sir, for your testimony. Are there questions from members of the panel? Okay, thank you both very much. Now, we stated at the outset that we were going to go to 2:15 on the immigration issue, and then we were going to move on. So it's now about 3. So we really are moving on to 2:56. So here's what I want to do. Because this committee's going to be here as long as it takes to get everybody heard. So everybody's going to have a chance to testify. But we are now going to take the other subjects that are on for hearing today and work through those, and then we're going to come back to immigration. I would like to give everybody the opportunity to signal what they came here for, if they'd like to, by, if I'm going to give people to stand and raise their hand for each side of this immigration issue, just so you voiced your opinion, if you'd like to do that at this time. So if those who are here to support House 33 and 333 and 3034, if you'd like to please rise and raise your hand, I appreciate it. Okay, we're not going to try to count. Thank you very much for doing that. Now, if you could be seated now. Those who can those on for that purpose. And those who are here to testify against or to express opposition to House 33 or House 3034, could you please rise and raise your hands? All right, we got you, I got you, sure. Okay. All right, well, so people have made their statement by their presence, I'm sorry, it's a small group, we could almost take care of it. I do have to move on, because I kept Representative Hahn standing there for about 45 minutes. So, now, thank you all very much for your testimony. We're going to come back to the immigration after the other testimony. I'm going to guess that that's going to take about 2 hours, so if you want to come back and testify at about 5, we will be here for more on the immigration issue. Now, sorry. Representative Hahn.
Drive to go to the GBH. Hey, how are you? Oh, yeah?
All right, now everybody's departing. If you get, please, we're going to continue this hearing now. If you're departing, please wait till you get outside to carry on your conversation, please. now we're going to go through the rest of the topics. We got, we're on the subject of child marriage. Representative Khan, Representative Chandler, and please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Chairwoman, the committee. Appreciate your taking the time for us to sit before you this afternoon. And I'm here to speak about House 2310 and Senate 785, an act to end child marriage in Massachusetts. They're companion bills filed by myself and Senator Chandler. So about a year ago, I had a reporter call me and wanted to know if I knew anything about the fact that children are getting married here in Massachusetts. That there's a forced child marriage situation going on here in the Commonwealth. And needless to say, I was shocked, even though I've had the opportunity to be the House Chairwoman of the Committee on Children, Families, and Persons with Disabilities for many years. I felt really very surprised and suggested that perhaps we would put a group together and take a look at this situation. And I want to just mention that we did bring a very fine group of folks together to talk about this situation. And we had law professors, people from GBLS, Mass Law Reform, the Probate Court, an organization called Unchained at Last, which started out over in New Jersey, and the Tahir Justice Center, whom you will hear from, and the Office of the Child Advocate. So some of us are here this afternoon and are grateful that we have an opportunity to put a panel together for the testimony. And I just really want to note that because you are a married child, you actually do not have this adult rights. So if children are getting married under the age of 18, they don't have child rights. You're still considered a minor, and as a minor, you can't file for a divorce, an annulment, or any previous abuse prevention order. You can't rent an apartment, open a checking account, and if you're married, you can't seek the services of the Department of Children and Families. So a minor cannot purchase cigarettes, vote, or serve on a jury, but they can marry. So here in Massachusetts, there was no low level of, in fact, of any requirement in terms of marriage. And so what we would like to do here is set a bright line at the age of 18. And so we are here today to talk about this, and hopefully you will get a sense of why we're here. And it is happening here in Massachusetts, it's happening all across the country, and there's some very large numbers of folks where this is of a concern. Children have been married at the age of 12 and 14, and in fact, from 2000 to 2014, approximately 1,200 children as young as 14 years old were married here in Massachusetts.
Thank you very much, Chair Khan.
Thank you very much, and thank you for taking this. I'm Senator Harriet Chandler from the 1st Worcester District, and I represent the Senate Bill 785, which is the companion piece that you've heard from the House Bill 2310, an act to end child marriages in Massachusetts. We've heard that the bill will prevent children under the age of 18 from being married in Massachusetts. Change from our current law, which allows for children as young as 15 to marry with judicial consent. We've heard my major reason for joining this Representative Khan in this bill is the lack of legal resources available to minors who find themselves in this position. And we've heard that minors, married or not, do not have access to legal remedies to the same extent as their adult counterparts. Minors cannot obtain a driver's license or photo ID, open a bank account or credit card, or even access certain judicial remedies without their parental consent. However, because parents are frequently enthusiastic supporters of the marriage, it becomes all the more important that children under the age of 18 in abusive or forced marriage situations have the tools available to protect themselves. Unfortunately, many of these legal rights and remedies, which we take for granted, are not available to them at such a young age. As a result, in many cases, children who are wed under 18 do not have a voice. So we're here really talking about voiceless people, voiceless children in our society. Because they have so very few options, and because as a result it is so exceedingly difficult for child brides to tell their stories. And we've had this problem ourselves in trying to present this case. It is very difficult to find children who can speak out and speak up on this subject. We are here today to give their voice. We're asking you to understand that although they are not here today, there are children in our communities who need us to protect them now. For all these reasons, I encourage the committee to give a favorable report to Senate Bill 785, an act to end child marriages in Massachusetts.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair Brownsberger and Chair Cronin. Thank you very much. I'm Jeannie Smoot. I'm with the Top Rate Justice Center, a national legal advocacy organization that serves survivors of many different forms of violence and abuse, including forced marriages. Forced marriages happen in many different families and communities in the United States for many different reasons. We conducted a national survey and found at least 56 different countries of origin among the families of victims, several different faith backgrounds, and we also learned about multi-generational American families in which this was happening. Forced marriages can involve not only physical violence, but also extreme psychological abuse, like a mother's threats that if the marriage doesn't happen, the child will be considered dead to the family or kicked out, cut off from her family and community forever. Ultimatums like these could work just like a gun to the head for any of us, and especially for a teen girl who is still very dependent on her parents for their love and support. So whatever the details or demographics, the common thread is that children are highly susceptible to coercion in general, and yet have very limited options to protect themselves. We've worked on hundreds of cases involving individuals at risk or survivors trying to escape all across the country,